Hallo, ek is Estie de Klerk. Vanaand word Fokus vir die eerste keer in 'n splinternuwe tydgleef uitgesaai hier op SABC 2. Welkom en ek hoop ons gaan baie lekker saamkuier vanaand. Bietjie later hoor ons hoe Beurtkrag die lewens van voedselprodusente bemoeilik en ons praat ook met 'n jong man wie se gratis toep werklose jongmense help. Die gebeure in Soedan die afgelope paar weke het weer gewys hoe maklik Suid-Afrikaners hulle self in 'n moeilike situasie kan bevind in die buiteland. Gevegte het uitgebreek tussen die twee hooffaksies van die land se militêre regering. Talle Suid-Afrikaners was vasgekeer in Khartoum. Na wekelange reddingspogings kon hulle veilig terugkeer na Suid-Afrika. Maar watter voorsorg moet Suid-Afrikaners tref wanneer hulle die buiteland besoek of daar gaan werk om te verseker dat hulle hulp kan ontvang indien dit wel nodig sou wees? Ons gesels nou met die organisasie Gift of the Giver se stigter, Dr. Imtiaz Sooliman. Die organisasie is bekend daarvoor dat hulle wêreldwyd mense te hulp snel, nie net in gevegsones nie, maar ook na natuurrampe. Welcome, Dr. Sooliman.
Thank you.
Dr.
Thank you
Sooliman,
very much.
Dr. Sooliman, South Africans that are traveling abroad either for work or for leisure that get caught up in emergency situations, whether it's conflict, earthquakes, tsunamis, what steps does one need to take in order to get out of an emergency situation?
In the old days, we never worried about such kind of things. You know, it's more now the challenge comes with situations in different countries in the world. Before South Africans travel, the most important thing is to know the country that you're going to and to find out how safe it is. Because there are certain countries that are very high risk in these days. Number one, if you're going to Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, and up to a few years ago, Yemen, you have to be very careful. As a foreign tourist, you are at high risk for being kidnapped, as many people over the years have been kidnapped in those countries. In Yemen, of course, it stopped, because that country has been at war for the last 7 to 8 years. So kidnappings have stopped substantially after Yolandi and Pierre Koki were last taken. So that's the first thing. The second thing, when you're traveling, you know, your country may be very nice, we have good information about the country, but you always got to check if there's a consular service in that country. Do we have a consulate? Do we have an embassy? You know, it says hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. You can get stuck in a country, somebody could have stolen your passport, something goes wrong, and if you don't have consular services, it can be a nightmare. So before you go on holiday, check the country has consular services. And whilst going there, and before you leave, check what your own home, your international relations in South Africa, what's the address or the phone number of a consul or embassy in the country that you're going to. It's always good. Nothing may happen. Everything may be fine in most cases. You'll have a wonderful holiday. You'll have a great time and you'll come back. Somebody dies. You get sick. You get injured. Some violence in the street. An earthquake strikes. Something goes wrong. You got to have a backup plan. This is all about a backup plan. And you need to inform the consulate or the embassy that you're coming. Give them your itinerary. I'll be arriving here. 5 members of my family, this, that, and the other. And if you change your itinerary, it's always good to give that itinerary to the embassy on the consular service. And if, as a courtesy, if you've got a chance, if it's practical and it's in the right city that you're on holiday, go and visit them. You never know how beneficial that could be. And then one last point, we can discuss other issues, is you've got to have copies of your passport. Of course, copies don't help, like in the case of Sudan. You can't cross a border with copies, but it helps you get backup support from consular services. And I always recommend have 4 copies. One that stays in your handbag that keeps your passport, the second one in your hand luggage, your third one in your big bag that goes into the hole that can get stolen or disappear, and the fourth one you keep in the safe in your hotel. You know, because your bag and your passport can be snatched from, your wallet can be snatched, your small bag can be snatched while you're walking in the street. So always keep 4 copies. And there are other safeguards, but these are the most important one. The most important is to check out the country which you're going to before you go there. And of course, the second one, to make sure there's consular services. 3, make sure you have the passports available. And there are other points which we can talk about.
So this backup plan that you've just mentioned, this is your sort of your exit strategy that should be part of your initial travel plans.
Well, as part of exit strategy, in addition to that, let's take it from a disaster point of view. I'm not a normal tourist. I very seldom visit countries just to go and see them for a holiday. The countries I go to is mostly in disaster situations. And before I take my teams in, I don't worry about how to get in. I worry about how to get out. And it's important to use airlines that have multiple, flights to a certain country, or also check if that country has multiple airlines that come in and out. You can't get, otherwise you can get stuck for days if there's only one or two airlines. That can present a problem. The country may be very good. It'd be nice to go for a holiday. But again, this is about worst case scenario. You have to make sure that you have multiple airlines coming to that country so that you can get out. The other important thing is to understand what are the visa requirements of the countries next door. War breaks out suddenly, something happens, you need to get out. Oops, you got the wrong passport. You can't get into a certain area. You need certain types of visas. It's very difficult to get. It's preferable to find countries, everybody wants to go on holiday. Unfortunately, the world has become such that there's lots of challenges at very short notice. So try to find a country where it's visa-free, online visa, visa on arrival, around the country that you're visiting. So if there's a problem, you can get out quickly without being stuck, with the visa issue.
And Dr. Sooliman, talking about passports, what are the challenges involved of not having your passport on you in a foreign country when you suddenly need to evacuate?
Ask the people of Sudan. It's a major nightmare. People had, and this was the thing that I think added to the trauma in Khartoum. Everybody's fear was, how am I going to get out? My passport may be in the South African embassy for some reason, or it may be in the embassy of another country because I want to get a visa to travel somewhere else, or maybe it's in a government building in Sudan because I'm getting a residence permit or a work permit. And then of course some people couldn't get to their houses and couldn't get to their workplaces where their passports were. And this created the biggest anxiety, that even though you had papers, hard copies of the passport, it was not the original. And this was an absolute nightmare at the border. There's not much you can do about that if you don't have your passport. Of course, if there's no conflict, if there's no difficulty, and the embassy is working, they can issue a temporary document within 24 hours. That's not impossible. But yeah, there was no functioning embassy. Everything had to shut down in the interest of the safety of those people that work in that embassy. And of course, all the embassies in Sudan, every government had to shut its embassy in the interest of its own staff. What's very important then is what I told you earlier. You've got to have contact with your consul and your embassy. And South Africans, a special thanks to the diplomatic service in South Africa. Many countries, the consular service didn't come to the border. There's tens of thousands of people waiting at the border without passports. They may have copies, but they don't have passports. And they can't cross the country into Egypt or anywhere else because they got no consular support. Somebody saying, I'm from South Africa or from Sudan or from Egypt or whatever. These are my citizens. Yes, they lost the documents. I'm proof of it. I'm signing them out into my care. Many countries didn't send consular services. So a special thank you for South Africa to doing that and sending people, to be there for our citizens at the border. You've got to have consular service, otherwise you're going to be stuck. And our government went the extra mile. They spoke on behalf of citizens from the United States, because one of the person in the group was a South African lady whose husband had an American passport and her daughter had an American passport. Again, they had no documents. They had passport, yes, in theory, but not in their hand. They only had copies. And again, our government intervened and they allowed them to go through. So consular service is absolutely critical if you don't have a passport.
Baie dankie Dr. Sooliman. Moenie weggaan nie. Ons het nog baie interessanthede op vanaand se spyskaart. En net hierna hoor ons hoe Beurtkrag die lewens van voedselprodusente raak. Beurtkrag is die afgelope week weer opgeskuif na fase 4 en 6. Maar dis nie net huishoudings en sakeondernemings wat reuse aanpassings moet maak om met baie ure sonder krag klaar te kom nie. Voedselprodusente word ook geraak en dit syfer dan ook weer deur na die verbruiker. Nadiva Schraipman het meer gaan uitvind oor hoe kospryse deur Beurtkrag geraak word.
Artikel 27 van die nasionale grondwet, wat sê dat alle mense van Suid-Afrika behoort toegang te hê tot genoegsame voedsel en ook water. Daai verpligting en daai verantwoordelikheid lê maar by die boere. Statistiek Suid-Afrika het onlangs die inflasiekoerssyfers bekendgestel. En wat ons sien is dat in Suid-Afrika is die inflasiekoers nie besig om te daal nie, maar is besig om te styg. En dis 'n groot uitdaging vir ons en veral vir die verbruikers daar buite. En wat is een van die kernredes daarvoor is natuurlik Beurtkrag. Boere het aan my meegedeel dat hulle letterlik oor Kersfees en die loop van die afgelope paar maande miljoene rande ekstra spandeer op die aankoop van diesel. Want nou ons sit nou met Beurtkrag vlak 6 wat dit onhoudbaar maak vir baie boere. En dit plaas hulle winsgewendheid onder geweldige druk. Verbruikers kry swaar. Baie mense is werkloos. Baie mense het net nie meer die vermoë om die kosmandjie wat hulle oor jare heen bekostig het om dit te kan finansier nie. Want hulle het net dood eenvoudig nie die geld nie. En dit is een van die rooi ligte wat flikker vir Suid-Afrika. Terwyl ons genoeg kos produseer, raak kos onbekostigbaar vir die gewone verbruiker daar buite.
Voedselinflasie neem steeds toe, met voedselpryse wat einde Maart jaar op jaar met 14% toegeneem het. Volgens Statistiek Suid-Afrika is dit die grootste toename die afgelope 14 jaar.
Beurtkrag hou 'n groot uitdaging in vir die landbousektor. Die hoenderbedryf het massiewe probleme gehad. En ek dink daai probleme duur maar voort. Met die feit dat hulle nie betyds hulle hoenders geslag kry nie. En die hoenders moet 'n bepaalde grootte bereik en dan betyds geslag word sodat dit aan jou kitskos restaurante voorsien word. Nou daai hele waardeketting was ontwrig deur die hoë vlakke van Beurtkrag en dit word nou nog steeds ontwrig. Let wel hier oor Desember het ons tot vlak 6 gehad. Nou het ons weer vlak 6. Baie boere het die risiko's wat daarmee gepaard gaan kon hulle mitigeer deur hulle eie stelsels in te sit. Melkerye moes melk weggooi as gevolg van die feit dat jou verkoelingsstelsels nie behoorlik die melk kan verkoel hou nie.
Fokus het talle vrugte en groenteboere genader vir 'n onderhoud. Hulle wou nie onderhoude op kamera toestaan nie, maar in Januarie vanjaar het kollega Ulrich Hendriks van die Noord-Kaap met boere daar gepraat.
Met loadshedding 6 het ons 14 ure 'n dag krag, 10 ure per dag het ons geen sinskrag nie. En ons probleem hierdie tyd van die jaar, pomp ons 24 uur, 7 dae 'n week om voldoende water op ons gewasse toe te dien. En ons gee basies die helfte van die water wat ons moet gee. Soos jy reeds kan sien, die mielies hier in ons agtergrond, 'n week terug was hulle grasgroen. Ons het binne 'n week staan ons waar ons vandag staan. As ons nog 7 dae van loadshedding 4 en op het, sal hierdie mielieland agter my totaal vernietig wees. Ons het 'n klomp aardappels, hulle is besig om te verdroog. Dit is 'n stapelvoedsel, aardappels vir Suid-Afrika. Dis maar hoofsaaklik 'n klomp werksgeleenthede gaan daarmee heen gaan. Voedselpryse, kyk maar oor 3 of 4 maande wat gaan gebeur, is katastrofes wat in die areas gebeur. Mense gaan bankrot speel, gemeenskappe. Ek kan net vir jou noem, ons gemeenskap kry verskriklik swaar, die hele Noord-Kaap, waar op die oomblik, ek bedoel is 100% van boere basies afhanklik. Gemeenskappe kry swaar, werksgeleenthede. Die loadshedding het 'n ongelooflike negatiewe effek op ons area, ongelooflik.
Frank de Grello besit en bestuur 'n suksesvolle vrugte- en groentewinkel in Johannesburg. Hy verduidelik hoe Beurtkrag die lewens van boere en verbruikers bemoeilik.
We had the severe heat, that 2 weeks of severe heat, and then we had that 3 weeks of rain. And worst of all is the load shedding. Because the load shedding, you need a generator. Fortunately, we got a generator, but even little stores, they can't keep generators, they can't afford generators. So what happens? You've got to keep the cold chain, keep the stuff fresh. And the farmer, today the farmer's got to have about 4 or 5 generators. And otherwise, he can't irrigate his lands because there's load shedding 4 to 6 hours a day. Everything has gone expensive because there's no supply on the market. Some of the smaller farmers, they can't afford a generator, so they've closed down. We've only got a handful of farmers left. A lot of the farmers have fallen out, so we've got to look after those farmers. If we don't look after the farmers, veggies, it's going to be very expensive in this country. And farming has become very expensive. Everything, the fertilizer has gone up 3 times, your diesel has gone up. So how can he still get maybe 10 rand for a cabbage? He can't come out.
Die organisasie, die Pietermaritzburg Justice and Dignity Group, hou rekord van die basiese voedsel wat lae-inkomste huishoudings maandeliks sal koop as hulle dit kan bekostig.
Load shedding impacts lower income households at least in 3 ways. Firstly, it pushes up the cost of the food at retail level because businesses, manufacturers, farmers now have to source the energy elsewhere, and that cost is given to the consumer. So it increases the cost of the food. The second way in which it impacts is that households used to have a survival strategy of buying in bulk at the end of each month in order because then they can get things cheaper, they can buy a combo of vegetables, etc. Now that is no longer possible because the food spoils because of load shedding, and then they have to throw some of the food away because of health reasons. And most of South Africa's staple foods require cooking. Maize meal require cooking. When electricity prices increase way above the level of the salary increase, that then leaves less money available in the budget to purchase food. It essentially means the situation will just get worse, which means that the household food security will become less and less and less, and the likelihood of hunger increasing more and more and more.
Dis nie grond wat kos produseer nie, dis kundigheid. En die Suid-Afrikaanse regering saam met die breë samelewing daar buite moet na hierdie kundigheid omsien. Ons moet die kundigheid beskerm, want as ons hierdie kundigheid verloor ons ook voedselsekerheid in die proses. Maak nie saak of hulle klein, groot, pink of swart of geel is nie. Boere speel 'n sentrale rol. Alles begin by 'n bord kos. Sonder kos is ons gedoem.
Dalk is dit maar tyd vir ons om self ons groentetuine aan te plant. Net hierna hoor ons meer oor die toep wat 'n student in KwaZulu-Natal ontwikkel het vir werklose jongmense. Met die hoë werkloosheidssyfer in Suid-Afrika, veral onder jong mense, het 'n student van Durban met 'n plan vorendag gekom. Die 23-jarige Mzamo Mbele van Umlazi het 'n selfoontoep, oftewel app ontwikkel, sodat jong mense gratis werk kan soek. Vanja van der Heever het hom besoek.
The app is called JobX. Yes, and JobX is a platform for young people to find jobs, and also build their CVs and scan their documents. The app was developed in 2022, last year. So when I made the app, I was like looking for something to do as a part-time for myself. Like as a young person, I always want to actually try to find other ways to actually earn money while I'm still in school. So as I was searching for jobs, for part-time jobs that a student can do, as well as actually go to school at the same time. As I was searching online, I joined multiple Facebook groups. We started chatting, we started sharing posts and so forth. What I realized through the whole process was that when someone shares a post, it's most likely not related to me. I'm in Durban. Someone says something in Johannesburg. Someone shares something that requires someone with an electrical engineering degree, and I realized, now I need a place where I can just find, something that doesn't require that much of, experience or education in order to get into that I can do while I'm at school, and that's that will only show me jobs based on my location, so I don't have to apply for things that are in Johannesburg or in Durban, understand? And I realized that no such platform really does exist that can actually is youth centered like that. So I took it upon myself to actually create this platform, and try and bridge the gap while also helping myself. I did really find employment because I did work at like ShopRite for a few months, like 2 months, through as I was building the app and testing it out. So okay, so actually proving it works. I did have a job myself. It's a national platform. So yeah, the app works all over South Africa. So I have 2 young people that are actually, still students themselves. They're actually working for me to actually get these jobs on the platform. So what they do is they contact the recruiters, they reach out to companies and businesses to tell them about this platform, make sure that they upload the jobs on there whenever they have anything available, so that any young person from anywhere in South Africa can just have job offers.
Tell us how does this app work?
Okay, so the app, when you first open it, it gets your location and then starts showing you jobs based on your location, like closer to you. Okay, and you can also apply to these jobs that you see on the app right on the same platform, and you can build a CV, a professional CV from the app, and that will be saved as PDF that you can attach whenever you're making these applications. Although I can't really track how many people are actually getting employment from the app, but what I do know is that so far there are over 45,000 people using the app, and over 2,000 reviews made. People acknowledging that the app is really helping them. Others actually wanting more things, such as advice on how to behave on interviews and all those things.
Mzamo sê jongmense kan nie altyd bekostig om aanlyn werk te soek nie, en dit is een van die hoofredes hoekom hy die selfoon toep geskep het.
The app itself does not really generate any income, since it's free, and it's data free as well, which means people can usually go on it without having any data on their phone. So what I did there was there's something called reverse data billing, which means it's called whitelisting an IP address. So basically any interaction that happens on the app, it's tracked how much consumption made, and how much, and then I get to just pay the entire bill used for everyone using the app.
En dis die einde van vanaand se uitsending. Moenie vergeet om volgende week Vrydag aand om 8:30 weer op SABC 2 in te skakel en weer saam met ons te kuier nie. Onthou Fokus is ook steeds op YouTube beskikbaar. Ons groet tot volgende week. Onthou dis Vrydag aand om 8:30. Geniet jou naweek.